Good evening, friends, YouTube land, all over the world, hopefully. This is Jeff with ASTROSCOOP Deep Dive Astrology Coaching. So happy Memorial Day weekend to all. Memorial Day in a couple days. And it's interesting, they were talking on the radio the other day. A veteran had called into a radio station, and he was saying how the Memorial Day process has gotten so consumerized, and it's all about sales, consumer sales, which is interesting. But happy Memorial Day to everyone, especially to anyone that has lost loved ones in any wars or the like. Let's just take a moment of silence to send them a prayer or a good thought. All right. So happy Memorial Day to all that have served for us. And whether you're pro or anti-war or violence, those men and women should be recognized for the sacrifice. And then the current men and women that are alive. So thank you very much for anyone that serves. Thank you for your service. So it's 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's May 25th. I'm looking out here in the west, and as I mention every week, the sunset around my house is going farther and farther, which is beautiful. So now it looks more like it could be almost 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and it's just really beautiful. However, I can't really see the sun because of all the brush, all the greenery that's coming in, which is bringing us from Taurus. Last week we talked about the Taurus-Gemini cusp, and tonight is all about Gemini. We're going to talk about Gemini, the twins. I'm going to talk about the ruler, which is Mercury, and we're going to talk about what Gemini really means, especially early Gemini, and then, of course, lots of celebrities to talk about and celebrity examples to mention how Geminis use their energies, their Mercury energies, their air energies in their craft, whether it's acting, music, and or writing. Gemini is a writer's sign. So happy birthday to all Gemini people out there. Today's May 25th. The Gemini 1 period is up here. It starts this week, which is May 25th to June 2nd, right around June 2nd or 3rd. Last week was the end of the Taurus-Gemini cusp. And I've known a lot of people born in the last 2 weeks, but this week, I can't think of, off the top of my head, I cannot think of a lot of people I've met that are Gemini 1 decan people, which is interesting. So for whatever reason, I can think of 2 people in the past that I worked with. One was born the 26th, and I believe one was born the 28th. So I can picture in my mind 2 people I worked with. But even in my family, I can only think of one person. I can only think of one family member that's born in this period. Again, when I talk about this, I'm not talking about all the Geminis for the next month. I'm talking about just Geminis this week. So some of the Gemini traits will apply to all Geminis generally, and then some will be just the first decan. So I just want to give a shout out to my daughter who made me this did this Gemini twins artwork today. I think this is her best one yet. My daughter's been drawing the art for me each week, and she has the moon in Gemini in her natal chart. She's has the Gemini moon, and I thank her very much for that. I think she's got a lot of talent. Thank you, sweetheart. It's a wonderful thing to have some art there for the twins. So we're going to get into Gemini. Now, when I talk about the signs each week here on my live streams, I'm fairly honest. I don't think I'm too blunt, but I try to be fair and honest about all the signs, the planets, and these particular periods, because there's a lot to put together. There's a lot of little subtle details with astrology to put the analysis together to talk about each decan and periods of each sign of the entire zodiac. But it's good to know about all the signs. It's always good to know what the potential weaknesses are, or if you misfire or misuse your energy, because that's the only way to learn. And often with certain signs, if you read blogs, you'll see how there's waves throughout the year. There's waves of people talking negative about a particular sign, and it changes. Sometimes it's Aries, sometimes it's Gemini, sometimes it's Scorpio. You can find a wave of how terrible everyone born under a particular sign is, because people have been burned or hurt by one or two people born under that sign. But what a lot of people are realizing that are into astrology is a lot of people are realizing the planets, certain planetary placements that people that they're dating or marrying have, and placing blame on the placements rather than in addition to the sun signs of being a particular sign. So that's kind of interesting. But of course, every sign has a dark side if it's misused. It has a lot to do with the involvement, my involvement, your involvement, the involvement of every single person. Now, even involved people, it doesn't mean we're not mean from time to time or insensitive or immature. You know, you can't be perfect. And for anyone seeking perfection as a human being, you might as well just give up. You're just going to have to chalk it up as hopefully more good days than bad days, or more positive days than neutral or negative. So that's a good thing to subscribe to. And I just want to mention that Russia continues to be my #1 country. I think this is like 3 weeks in a row now, because I know one week I missed my live. I think 2 weeks ago I missed my live stream. So actually now we're going back almost a month. And Russia, I'm getting more views from Russia, and 70% of them approximately are male. And out of those, 25 to 35% of those males are between the ages of 25 and 44. So very, very interesting that I'm getting Gen Z and older millennial males, but primarily from Russia. Not many from the United States right now, where I'm from, and also Pakistan. Thank you very much, and the Ukraine. Those continue to be my top 3: Russia, Pakistan, and Ukraine. So whatever I'm doing right, thank you. And if you could comment and give me some fodder and give me some meat to go on, and what you like hearing, what you like that I cover, and what you'd like to hear. I'm really, really curious to know in other countries what kind of astrology you're practicing, and do you like the astrology that us Americans are practicing, whether it's tropical Western astrology or sidereal astrology or more Indian or Vedic astrology. What kind do you like, and what do you find most authentic about it, as far as knowing yourself, your loved ones, your friends, or looking at events? I know some astrologers don't even do the personal stuff. They don't even talk about people. Some astrologers just do events. They take a war, they do the chart. They take a school shooting, they do the chart. You know, a political rumbling, you know, rally, they do the chart. Then the political election, they do the chart, you know, kind of thing. So there's all sorts of astrologers around the world that are doing all sorts of different things, but taking some of the core fundamentals from the systems that are kind of the same, the core basics, basic and fundamentals from the astrology systems. So I think that's really, really cool. So thank you, Russia. Shout out to you. And United States is way down there. So it's interesting that my viewers from the US is much lower. So whatever that means, but we're just going to keep on keeping on. AstroScoop, I'm growing. Here it is almost summer, and have grown pretty well with subscriber base in the spring. Not quite as much as I'd like, but we are getting there. We're moving forward. I'm getting a lot more comments and contact correspondence from people. So that's good. Keep it up. And remember, if anyone sees this, I am available for natal chart readings, solar returns, Saturn returns, compatibility. That's one type of chart I love to do, is compatibility between two people, whether it's friends or marriage partners, lovers, whatever. That's really fascinating. So thank you for all that. Okay, so now that we're already in, and you know, we're in Gemini now, so it's probably going to influence me and you to talk more than usual. You have to look where Gemini is in your chart. And but today we're at a very, very early degree of Gemini. So Gemini 1 is what I consider youthful mental speed. So we finished Aries and Taurus. We went through the infant and the baby. So now we're in the third sign of the zodiac, the first air sign, and the first human sign, which is the twins, which is the first human sign of the zodiac. So we take the infant and the baby, and we become like a bigger teenager that learns how to be social and learns how to influence others to try to get their needs met through this Gemini youthful mental speed and agility. So when we're talking about early Gemini, this first decan or pure Gemini, most astrologers agree that it's ruled by Mercury, but the sub-ruler is also Mercury. So it's a double Mercury person, double mercurial mental person ruled by the twins. Now, just saying that to a lot of people, saying the Mercury and the twins evokes a lot of things. People have a lot of strong reactions to this sign, to Gemini, both positive and negative. And we'll get into that. But this is definitely a sign, especially the early Gemini period. This is definitely a sign that has great potential. I don't want to say for good or bad, because I think that's deeper. That's more like a deeper sign like Scorpio. But Geminis have such a natural talent for almost anything. The talent in Gemini people, and I mean natural talent, not necessarily even education or classical training like music or athletics or whatever, writing. The natural talent of early Gemini with the youthfulness can be off the chart. But with that talent can a lot of problems can come along with that, I think. And it's hard for anyone to be completely 100% unbiased when you're talking about astrology and signs. And any astrologer that pretends to be 100% unbiased, he or she is not being honest with you. I try to be as unbiased as I can, but I've still had experiences with my chart and dynamics with other people, dynamics with Aries and Taurus, which we covered, and of course dynamics with Gemini suns and also Gemini planets. So, you know, something that I experienced maybe that was positive or negative with a Gemini person may be different for you. It may be completely positive or just neutral. So there's a lot there. So I think we have to be fair to the signs, but we also have to be real. It's good to be real and not be so afraid to say, you know, a sign has a possible negative quality or has a drawback or a flaw. That can be turned into a strength. You know, that's kind of like what astrological coaching is about, turning the weaknesses into strengths and harnessing the strengths so that your weaknesses don't get carried away, or you don't get carried away with your weaknesses. So the youthful twins. Yeah, Gemini, I'll tell you, Gemini people, I mentioned on my live stream last week that the Taurus Gemini cusp person is more like a force rather than a person. The force, the determination of Taurus, and the dynamic, airy energy of Gemini coming together, earth and air coming together to make a very, very earthy, but sensual and very, very mentally smart person. And I talked about pace. So in Gemini, in this early Gemini period that we're in, you see how spring is in full effect. But the difference is, as a couple weeks ago, to when we were in Taurus, fruitful Taurus, where spring was moving at a nice, slow, even pace, and the creatures were coming out and the greenery. Now it's exploded with dynamism. The nature has exploded. And it's like everything is there and just waiting for the Cancer summer kickoff, sign of Cancer. So Gemini being so youthful, Gemini is kind of a rootless sign. As it's almost as if the early energy of Gemini has no roots. Now, it doesn't mean Gemini people aren't connected to their family or family oriented or don't enjoy enduring relationships, but there is always a thread in the Gemini psyche, I think, because of Mercury, and especially the double Mercury influence, the Gemini psyche that wants freedom. Now, there's many signs. We all want freedom. There's many signs that prioritize freedom more over security, emotional security, financial security, whatever it may be. Gemini could be in the top 2 or 3 for freedom at all costs, I think. Now, the interesting thing is, because Geminis are rootless at the base of their energy, the base of their sign, they have a rebellious stance, almost always. Now, Gemini people can be cheerful and lively and cordial and charming rebels, right? A rebel isn't just a bomb throwing person, at a rally with a bandana on and a scowl on their face. Geminis can rebel against you or the system or the man with a smile and a quick wit and a childlike grin. That's what Gemini can do. So Gemini is this is going to be an interesting hour. Gemini is just it's like probably out of the 12 signs, it's probably the wild card of the zodiac, because Geminis can go any which way but loose. There's no other sign that can play and be like a chameleon and be, you have the 2 twins, but the twins are not two-faced. Geminis get coined as being two-faced. The Geminis have the same face. It's twins together. It's the twin energy that are very look exactly alike, but they're different. They're yin and yang. They're night and day. They're dark and light. So you could say the early Gemini people are battling good and evil, or night and day, or yin and yang, constantly in their mind. Think about that. They're a dual sign, the first human sign. They're mutable, which indicates restlessness and changeability. And then the first mutable sign after a fixed sign. So they're rootless. How could they not be rebellious? They are so open and searching for everything that life has to offer. Their instinct is instantly is to if you restrict them, is to rebel. No restriction. What? Oh, you mean I can't eat more at the buffet? You mean you can't make my drink exactly how I want it at Starbucks? Or you can't? So, anybody that knows a Gemini, or if you have a lot of Gemini in your chart, take a good, honest look at yourself or that person and think about how you or that person has rebelled against people or things, and in a different way than Aquarius. We'll talk about, Aquarius is the rebel, is the rebel of the Zodiac, rebel without a cause. But from a purely kind of a youthful, think of like a, 17, 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old man or woman, boy or girl, becoming a young adult. Do they like restriction? Think about that. Think about that as in a Gemini sort of way. So Mercury is the ruler. The sub-ruler is also Mercury. This correlates to energy, pure energy. Most of it's mental, but it's also physical energy. And quarrels. How can you be so strongly mental and not quarrel with people? Geminis have a natural charm, especially early Geminis have a natural charm to them that can get you to be on their side. They can win you over and get you on their side, but that it can also just as quickly dismiss your point of view and argue with you. So that's the light and the dark. That's both. So Mercury, so Gemini this week has one star called Aldebaran. Aldebaran. It goes back to 1286 AD. It's a bright star, and it relates to quarrels, and it's also, I paraphrased it as endless, restless mode. It's like very persistent. It's a persistent mental Gemini energy in that constellation that I was reading. And the early Gemini raw mind is endless because it's a mode. It's I think. The phrase is I think. So we're going from I have with Taurus, I have my possessions, I have my values, to, okay, I'm going to take all those values, emotional values, but also physical values, physical possessions. I'm going to take those and run with it once I get an idea. Now I'm in Gemini. Now I have all these ideas of what to do with that. I have so many ideas. And those ideas we started in Aries that weren't finished, that Taurus was working on, now I can run with it because I'm Gemini. And I'm quicker than Aries and Taurus. So I can fly. But that star, Aldebaran, can create an endless, restless cycle. And it can also be related to violence, I read. Does that mean that Gemini people are predisposed to violence? No. I have no evidence-based facts on that. But some of the research I have done has shown, a couple studies have shown that Gemini natives score high on some polls for neurotic behavior. Whether there was forthcoming and they were honest about that. But that I did read that Geminis score high on neuroticism, neurotic behavior, and that could just be an overworking of the mind. So what does all that mean with Mercury and the star and this endless restless energy? Does it mean that Geminis can't focus? No, not necessarily. You got to understand how Geminis think if they let you, even if they give you any idea of how or any inkling. They'd rather not have you know how they think. They'd probably rather not. But here's a big negative with Gemini. Geminis, for all their brilliance and thinking up these ideas and this natural talent, they limit their own horizons. You limit your horizons, Gemini, when you don't consider the bigger picture and you only consider the local scene. So you want to master and be ahead and think. You want to be 2 steps ahead mentally of everyone around you in your local scene to protect yourself so that you feel secure. Because a Gemini that's insecure, that doesn't feel that they're steps ahead of others, then you're going to have a problem with that Gemini. So it would take an exceptionally mature and secure Gemini person to be able to not misuse that energy and not misfire with that mental energy, I think. So Geminis, you can limit your horizons. Now your opposite on this period in 6 months is the Sagittarius 1 person, which is ruled by Jupiter, which is a double Jupiter person. Now, one thing that Gemini 1s have going for them that's different than Sag is Geminis are more flexible and they're not necessarily as demanding about certain fixed, morals or routines like other signs might be. A Sagittarius 1 would be more demanding than a Gemini. That's your opposite. But the Sagittarius person would consider more horizons and maybe try different things. And that leads me into the next point. Geminis need to respect necessary rules or not. Geminis don't like rules, and Gemini planets don't like rules. And I, I think in this world, there's enough danger, there's enough negativity, there is malevolence, there are malevolent people out there. There's a lot of seedy, yucky stuff out in the world. It's a lot of beautiful stuff, but there's a lot of seedy, yucky stuff too. So I think it's good to respect necessary rules. Any civilized community or society has to have some rules. And whether you consider yourself a rule follower or you're a rule breaker, for Gemini in particular, especially early Gemini people, a lot will have to do with what their Mercury sign is placed in. So if you're a Gemini or you have some major Gemini in your chart, your bingo is going to be Mercury. You have to look at your Mercury placement, your house, your aspects, and then look at those transits. Look at your transiting planets. Look at when Mercury's retrograde in the sky and what it's doing to the cosmic chart, and then compare that to your natal chart. That is a lot too. Because one thing about Gemini people is Gemini's thrown off very easily in all ways. You could almost mold, you could, if you're a coach or a mentor or a positive parent to a Gemini kid or person, you could mold them into a really wonderful person because they're so adaptable and versatile. Gemini kids are like, they often sound like, a 10-year-old Gemini almost, it sounds like a college student the way they're talking sometimes. So that's the natural talent of Gemini, the adaptability, the versatility. Geminis have all that beautiful stuff. So if Geminis can concentrate on, it's okay to be positive. You don't always have to get what you need through means of cunning, if that makes any sense, like an animal, right? Sometimes in life, it's good to be cunning. It's good to be clever. That's how you survive, right? But is that a good way? The coach in me if I was coaching a Gemini, I would not suggest that, because eventually it's going to wear down the credibility of the Gemini. That's what it will do. It will wear down your credibility. And anyone that has been married to or has dated major Gemini people, you know that. The Gemini person, no matter how smart they are, no matter what they have going for them, there's often a block there emotionally, and they can often sell themselves short and not be as developed as maybe some of the other signs, especially the early raw Gemini. So respect necessary rules and limit, this looks like limit dislike of blocks. It's okay in life to have some blocks. And Gemini, if life blocks you or a person blocks you, I know you don't like that. You want to be free to always move and get ahead and maneuver. But sometimes there's just blocks in life. And you know what that block's going to do? It's going to challenge you. Maybe you need to see the bigger picture, and that's why it's slowing you down to block you. You know, signs like Aries, signs like Gemini, those are two, because it's the early part of the zodiac. Youthful signs that want to move fast. You know what? Life is going to get in your way. People are going to get in your way. And it's not always a bad thing. You know, maybe you need to slow down to learn something. Think about that. That's a possibility. So all this energy of not liking, you know, limiting horizons or not liking routines or rules, Gemini can be evasive. So Geminis do not like to be trapped, you know, especially early Gemini energy. We're off of Taurus now and we're just into Mercury. So we don't have a Venus ruler this week. It's just Mercury. It's just the twins. So we don't have an animal influence here necessarily. So Geminis can be evasive, especially mentally. And I had an astrologer once when I was in college. I worked at a job, and one of the women, middle-aged women there, was an astrologer. And I used to talk to her that I was getting into astrology. And I wasn't that great then, but I was very passionate about it. And she said, Gemini is one of those signs that when you ask them a question, if you really feel like you didn't get the answer, or you never get the real answer, she's like, the person's probably a Gemini. Now, that was her bias, obviously, and you can't generalize and say that's every Gemini person, right? Or even Moon in Gemini, Gemini rising. But the tendency to be evasive because of the restlessness, not wanting to be trapped, it's there. And that evasiveness can cause early Gemini to be manipulative. So that's a misfire for the air sign energy in general, is mental manipulation. You know, it's great to be charming. And Geminis can charm people, but you know, it's like that thing that we all go through when we're young and in love. When we're all younger and in love, people give us all sorts of red flags, right? You're dating someone, but it doesn't matter. Why doesn't it matter? Because the sex is good, so you forget about the red flags. That you feel like you're in love because you're on a high. It is a drug. So remember, with drugs, there's side effects, and you always come down from a drug. So the sex, the love is a drug. It's a drug high. So people give us red flags, but because we're on that high, we don't see them, I think. So, and all those other chemicals are firing when love is new and exciting and you're relating. And Gemini is a sign that loves, probably more than any other sign, to examine that excitement of love, to come in really, really, really fast with laser focus, and then get that curiosity and figure out what's going on, and then zoop, and then Gemini comes back to observe. So that's why Geminis can be hot for you, and then cold, and hot and cold. Geminis can be very hot and cold. It's not always that they're actually deliberately being mean. if they're deliberately doing as a reward system to say, hey, give me what I want and I'll reward you, or if you don't, I'm going to take it back. That's manipulative. But Geminis are so, the Gemini energy is so susceptible to what's around the corner and what's new that it's almost impossible for a Gemini planet not to say what's next. That's what I see. Whether that's positive or negative is up to you to decide. But of course, if a Gemini person gets into the 30s, 40s, 50s, and is not maturing, is not maturing and moving forward, clearly you have an older looking person that may be successful and charming, and then there's nothing underneath. There's no substance. And the opposite of Sag, there could be a strong lack of warmth there, because an undeveloped air sign person is someone that may not just be may not know how to express human warmth to other people. And again, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, because I have not known a lot of people born this week as far as Sun in Gemini. I've known a lot of people and done a lot of charts for people with Gemini planets, Moon, Mars, Venus, rising, midheaven, but not the Sun. So I'm going by a few people I've known and a lot of research that I've read about, and also just the feeling of tuning into the air. We're in the air now. We're in air. So you close your mind, you close your eyes, and in your mind you just think, what is Gemini air to me? What are the twins? One thing I love about people with Gemini in their charts, in case you think I've been negative thus far, or if I'm bashing Gemini, that's fair. But one thing I'll tell you I love about Gemini placements is, for the most part, unless there's an affliction, Gemini placements don't hold grudges. So you could have a battle with them, you can have a quarrel with them, they could even manipulate you, or you could get into a little situation that needs ironing out and a little honesty. But most likely, they'll forgive and forget and move on with you or something else. So that's the beauty of Gemini. One word's called resilience. Resilience. That is the beauty of Gemini. And anyone that has major Gemini in their chart, that's one of your really, really beautiful gifts, is that you are resilient. Life can knock you down, but you're clever, and you can go through different paths and go through different ways, where some of the other signs might want to just go straight, or might want to just go this way. You can go different ways, and you can jump different ways over different hurdles. So Geminis can be quite resilient. And contrary to popular opinion that Geminis cannot last in relationships, if Geminis are given space to think, space for freedom to do their own thing, whether that's just in the house or outside, if a Gemini person's an introvert, but they still want to do writing inside, or maybe they want to do live streams and they want to talk for hours, they might just want to be by themselves and have that space where they don't have to give mental or emotional energy to other people. Then that Gemini person can feel secure. And if they don't feel trapped or suffocated, they can be a great, fun, lively, and communicative mate or spouse. So Geminis, that could work for Geminis, but it's about Geminis having that space and relaying that to your partner and telling that person or that friend, I really need this. It's nothing against you. So, I feel like if Geminis sometimes you could be a little more honest, and don't be around the bush, you can iron those things out with people. So the lesson is to relate fully to others. That's basically, in a nutshell. Take all the complicated astrology books about Gemini and all the constellations and everything. There you go. Is relate fully to others. Now, you might be a Gemini and saying, what's this guy Jeff saying I don't relate to others? Everybody says I'm such a sweet, beautiful, charming, loving person. I love my family. I love my friends. I'm not saying they don't. But notice the word I used, fully. Fully. relate fully to others. Geminis are always relating to others, always. Geminis love love. Geminis love fun. Geminis love sociability. Geminis love activities, and they love people. But that doesn't mean they're relating to you. That doesn't mean they're giving. Are they giving their heart? Are they giving from their solar plexus? You know, it's a big lesson for Geminis to not be superficial and to relate. And that includes developing an inner life. So it's almost like the Gemini, if a Gemini person is on the level of like a fresh teenager, ready to spring into and start life, with college or whatever, you know, the joie de vivre and the beauty of and variety of life, all the colors of life is intoxicating to Gemini. People, the colors, the foods, it's just everything. So obviously Gemini wants to try a lot of different things, however that may be. But Geminis would be wise to develop their inner life as well. And then the more superficial stuff you do outside of your home life will just be a bonus, and it'll just be fun. Because there's a place in life for superficial stuff. I agree with that. Sometimes you just have to listen to superficial music or watch silly, superficial, dumb movies just to get your mind off of the stress of family. If you're grieving about something, if you have a health condition, or just raising a family, life is heavy and mundane, and life can get really boring. The day in and day out of doing the same stuff can get really boring. But it doesn't get any more boring than for Gemini people. There's no sign in the zodiac that gets bored quicker than Gemini. And tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Name a sign that gets bored quicker than Gemini. I don't think there is one. But that's a big lesson for Gemini people, and especially notably for this Gemini period. I have a family member. I just thought of another person that's born this week. I have a family member who has a friend, and she's born this week. And I have met that woman, and she is, I want to say she's early 70s, still going strong, working full time at her job. And the other woman asked her, well, why are you still working? Because financially she doesn't have to. And she said, what am I going to do with myself? She goes, I have so much mental energy. I have to write or read something every day. And when I get into work for the first hour or two, I'm reading all the stuff and getting ready for the day. And she's in her 70s, and she hasn't quit her job just because her mind she knows she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't have the structure of that at home. So she's like 72 or whatever, and she's still flying, but working because she wants to, not because she has to. But she said, my mind never stops. So I talked about the mental motor from last week with the Taurus Gemini person. So the Gemini planet, wherever it is, and we can talk about more about Gemini planets in the future if you want to hear about certain placements and compatibility and all that stuff. It's when we get to the celebrities in a moment here, it's the talent. Again, I started the live stream off with talent. All signs have natural gifts and talents, and then those get nurtured through our charts and through our upbringing and our parents, and then practice makes close to perfect on most things, with athletics and music and things like that, practice. But with Gemini, it's amazing how Gemini planets can pick up things so fast, learn things so fast. I'm always amazed by Gemini, especially suns and moons. The moons too. Gemini moons, oh my gosh. They pick up things so fast and so almost effortlessly. It doesn't mean they do it thoroughly or do it in a deep way, but they do pick things up, physical tasks, but mental tasks, writing, things like that, very, very quickly. And even though multitasking really isn't a thing, right? I guess with our minds, we really do need to concentrate on one thing and then we can go to another one, and then maybe come back to the original thing. But Geminis will always try to multitask, especially true Mercury Gemini people. But that wit, that wit of Gemini and that resilience, Geminis keep an air of humor about them. And that's a good survival thing in life, especially in these days, these post-COVID days. There's talk of another pandemic coming, and whatever you make of that, whether you make that's engineered or natural, I don't know. That's a conversation. But there's talk of that. So for Geminis to have humor, for Geminis to be resilient, so not all signs can have a good sense of humor and be resilient during dark times or tough times. But, Gemini could do that. And so Geminis can teach, they can teach the other signs. That's another positive. Teach us other signs to be resilient and to be youthful and maybe not take everything so seriously. So that's a good thing. So thank you, Geminis, for that, for giving people that, because Geminis can lighten up the room, can lighten up the community, lighten up, a work area. And, there's a lot of seriousness going on, and there's a lot of serious signs and heavy signs and passionate signs. And sometimes you need a little air to cool it, maybe cool it down a little bit. So that's definitely something that Geminis can do. All right, looks like we have a couple people in here. Thank you for showing up and putting up with me. I appreciate it. Happy birthday to all Geminis. I can't imagine, I'm not a Gemini, but I can't imagine being a Gemini. I would not want to be a Gemini. And again, that's not a negative dig to Gemini. It's just because it's just for me, for my opinion, my humble opinion. I would not want to be Gemini. I think it would be amazing, the talent to have, the natural talent, but I don't think I could stand it. If my mind, I've learned over the years to calm my mind and slow my mind down. It's not easy. You have to work at it. We all have to work at it. But a sun in Gemini, oh my gosh. And if you're a Gemini and you have Mercury in Gemini as well in your natal chart, holy cow. I've known a lot of Taurus people with Mercury in Gemini. And even for an earth sign to have Mercury in Gemini, which is well placed, by the way, it's well placed because it has its own natural strong Mercury energy working for the communication part of your chart. So let's talk about Gemini celebrities. So there's an endless list of incredibly talented, mercurial, intellectual Gemini celebrity people. And I'm a big music person. Any of you that follow me or have watched multiple videos of mine, I often have celebrity examples, and I use musicians a lot. I use actors and actresses, famous people, but musicians primarily, as I just love to look up singers, guitarists, bassists, drummers, and the like. So here we have, first one is Tim Rice Oxley. He's from the group Keen from Britain. Kind of an underrated group. They're kind of Coldplay light. Coldplay is a monster group that there's like as big as U2, right, in the world. Well, Keen is successful, but they're like Coldplay light. They sound very much like Coldplay, but they also have their own sound. He's wonderful. He is does some amazing songwriting and keyboard work in Keen. It's beautiful. It's airy. It's poignant. Unbelievable. Very gifted. Incredibly underrated piano and keyboard player, Tim Rice Oxley. Listen to Keen. Beautiful stuff. In fact, some of their stuff I think is better musically. It's a little more complex musically than Coldplay. Tony Hadley from another British group, Spandau Ballet. This Much Is True. They had that big hit True in the 80s, which was in those 80s movies and everything. Very, very good singer. Very youthful. Again, very poignant. This is another theme with Gemini singers and songwriters, is this poignant. Geminis can be abrasive, but Geminis can also lend a really beautiful, light, airy element into the music. It's unmistakable. If once you hear the Gemini influence, if you know how to listen to it. It's there. Danielle Harris is a horror movie actress, and she's good at being really kind of nervous and mental and intense. And she's an underrated actress. I think she's like a Jamie Lee Curtis light, a B movie actress of Jamie Lee Curtis version, but she's also very good. Mike Joyce, who's one of the co-founders of the Smiths, again another. Morrissey, the lead singer, a lot of Mercury themes in his chart, and the Smiths' lyrics are very, very good and very well thought out, and the music matches the lyrics very well. Alan Wilder is one of the co-founders of the British group Depeche Mode, another wildly successful British group who has very wonderful versatility and mercurial lyrics, wonderful stuff. Jesse Johnson is a R&B guitarist who used to be under the tutelage of Prince. He was a Prince protege, and then he used to play guitar for Prince, and then he went into the R&B group The Time with Morris Day. So Jesse Johnson is not talked about in guitar circles at all. He is an amazing guitarist. Look up Jesse Johnson. He's as good as Prince, so almost as good as Prince ever was, but he never got the accolades. And he had a lot of problems as a rebel in his real life. In real life, I think he's had a lot of problems with drugs and getting into trouble with the law or domestic abuse or something like that. So poor Jesse. Hope he improves. But yeah, he's an amazing guitarist. Simon Gallup from The Cure, the seminal group The Cure, wonderful influence there. Then Marilyn Monroe, we get out of the music here. Marilyn Monroe, obviously, what to say about her as a Gemini. She had an amazing presence and effervescence and energy to her. And, to say she was energetic, right? That doesn't even, she was more than energy, Marilyn Monroe. But she had those, odd affairs and those troublesome affairs with Joe DiMaggio and some other men from Hollywood, those true kind of Hollywood affairs. And it seems like all of that was a facade to cover up her childhood, her impoverished childhood, and probably abuse. I'm sure she was, abused as well, and not treated well in society, not respected. So that was very tough with her as a Gemini, and there might have been some mental health illness there as well. Paulina DaCosta is a wonderful percussionist. He plays on a lot of wonderful 70s and 80s records. He played with Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones and George Duke. Amazing, extremely versatile. Can play almost any drum. Versatility. John Bonham, another drummer from Led Zeppelin. Incredibly versatile. Clint Eastwood, the actor, director, producer, writer. What hasn't Clint done in the movie world? He's done everything. That's another thing about Geminis. It's like, it's not that just Geminis, you're versatile, but it's how does a Gemini do 10 different things and do it well? There's almost no other sign that can do that. Like, I can't do that. I might be able to try to do one or two things well. And I'm always learning. As long as I've been doing astrology, I'm still learning and I'm still trying to get better every week and every month. But Geminis, like Clint Eastwood, it's almost like he came out of the womb, with that look on his face, and started directing with his camera. Amazing. Noel Gallagher, definitely a very rebellious, acerbic, abrasive kind of guy from the group Oasis, which is a Beatles-inspired group from the late 80s and 90s. And he and his brother Liam don't get along. What a surprise. Mercurial guys that have big egos that can't get along. Mel Gaynor is from the group, the Scottish group this time. Instead of England, we're talking about Scotland. Simple Minds that played Don't You Forget About Me from the Breakfast Club. Mel Gaynor was the drummer. Larry Blackman from the group Cameo from the 70s and 80s, R&B group Cameo. Wonderful. I've seen them in concert. He's so he's so gifted. What a voice on him, and so smooth, just so smooth and charming with his lyrics. A true, charming, smooth, suave, positive Gemini. Like what? Oh man, he's great. Susie Shu from and the Banshees. She used to be with Robert Smith in The Cure and Simon Gallup, and very, very versatile, very mercurial, very smart. See, when Gemini, that's the thing about Geminis too. Geminis can be superficial, but when you have Geminis that are songwriters and musicians, they can actually get deep with it. They can get deep with it because it's not necessarily emotional to them. So if it's not a relationship, Gemini can go deeper. It's harder for a Gemini to go deeper in a relationship, most likely, depending on the chart. But in their craft, Gemini, even a Gemini like Prince, he used to, oh my God, he used to go so deep into his songs. So Stevie Nicks, what to say about her, whether you like her or not. She's undeniably a mercurial goddess and incredibly talented. Now, Stevie has a lot of strong indicators in her natal chart, which grounds her a lot. So even though she's a Gemini, Stevie's got a lot of earth there. She's got the Capricorn moon. I believe she has Mars in Virgo, which is more orderly. So there's things in her chart that help ground her as a Gemini person. And of course, her lyrics in Fleetwood Mac are incredibly thoughtful, wistful, and poignant. Beautiful, beautiful. Miles Davis, what can you say about Miles Davis? One of the most talented musicians on the planet from any century, I think, right? Also kind of troubled. He was kind of a eccentric, secretive kind of guy from what I've read. But listen to that. What's that iconic album from Miles Davis? I believe it's Kind of Blue. I think that's one of his biggest selling albums. It's subtle, but it has energy. It's personal, but it's impersonal. It's emotional, like gently emotional, but it's also detached. So it's true Gemini. It's everything. It's everything. Colin Farrell, he's a really good actor. He's got a good look to him. He's got that brow. He's got that stare of intelligence, I guess. And he's pretty versatile. I think he's an underrated actor as well. I appreciate him. Klaus Meine from the rock supergroup, German group, the Scorpions, from the 70s and 80s and 90s. Scorpions are not everyone's taste, hard rock, heavy metal, but they had some beautiful ballads and beautiful songwriting that was very, again, here's the word again for the night, poignant. Poignant. I don't think there's any other sign I would say poignant so many times other than Gemini. So there you go, Gemini. Is that your word for the night? Klaus Meine. The last person I had in here is Corey Hart, the Canadian singer, pop alternative singer from the 70s and 80s. And Corey Hart said that he wears his sunglasses at night. And I remember I dated a girl that loved him, that she thought he was incredibly attractive. And her moon was a Gemini, which is probably conjunct his sun. So her moon's a Gemini, he's a sun in Gemini. So that's another thing. Gemini planets find kinship in other Gemini planets and other people, but a different planet. If you're a sun in Gemini born this week, you might have a kinship with a moon Gemini person, or a Gemini rising person, or a Venus Gemini, And so all these celebrities, I had a lot more, but I knew it was going to take up too much time. There's a lot to talk about with Gemini. And even though I haven't met a lot of people born this week in person, there is so much celebrity gossip and talk about Gemini people. And Gemini definitely is one of those buzzwords, zodiac signs, where there could be a lot of negative, a lot of negative information going around. There's positive, but there's also a lot of negative. So that's why I lay it out for like the true essence of the sign, because we all have choice in how to use our energies. And are we going to misfire? Certainly. But you know, one of the most important things that, you know, if any of you have ever done therapy, any kind of psychotherapy, now obviously there's good therapists and there's bad therapists. But if you get good therapists that make you think in the right way so that you can change and adjust, which is what Geminis are good at, they'll always say that, oh, I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Oh, I don't know. The train went off the track. But anyways, it's the Mercury talent from all these celebrities is unbelievable. And you're talking about a lot of people that, you know, some of those musicians are classically trained, some aren't. You know, I know Prince is not born this week. Prince is born a different week. But Prince, the musician, artist formerly known as Prince, he taught himself almost every instrument. And I feel like maybe, like, you know, an Aquarius sun sign, a Pisces sun sign, or a Gemini sun sign could do that. I don't think there's any other signs that could really like teach themselves every instrument without official lessons. I think that's amazing. So that's my kind of message to Geminis this year. I'm going to briefly look at the weather, the cosmic weather right now. So for Geminis, for you born this week, you're early. We're at 5 degrees of Gemini right now. So any of you that are born this week, you're going up until like around 12, 13 degrees of Gemini if you know your chart. Now, your Gemini, the transit is ruled by Mercury in Taurus. It's not retrograde, which is good. It's direct at 14 of Taurus. That helps ground things a little more for Gemini. However, Venus has also entered your sign now. So Venus is now back in Gemini, which is going to make the love nature, the collective love nature, a little lighter and a little more flirty, a little more experimental. Jupiter has also just entered Gemini. So finally, look at that. After we've had Jupiter in Taurus for so long. So Gemini people, if you're born today or tomorrow, Jupiter is conjuncting your sun very soon. That's great. It should give you energy. It should help you expand your life, but it could also help you overdo or cause you to overdo things. So just be careful of that. And then there's no other Gemini. Pluto obviously is retrograde at Aquarius, which is just shy of 2 degrees. And so you have Jupiter Gemini just started, Venus Gemini, and obviously Sun Gemini. So, you know, it's just a wonderful time for us to lighten things up. Oh, Karen says, happy Memorial Day to you and your family. To you as well, Karen. Thank you so much. I wish you good health. I really do. I know I haven't heard from you in a while, and I wish all of you good health. And forgive me if I was a little blunt with some of my Gemini interpretations. I just like to keep it honest. But Carolyn says, very comprehensive analysis of a very complex sign. Thank you. Correct, Carolyn. Yeah, Gemini is complex. And that's why the perception, again, my perception of Gemini doesn't necessarily mean it's right, because Gemini is such a versatile, multifaceted sign that Gemini has that light and dark, yin and yang, night and day, always balancing, but not in the way that a Libra would balance information, not necessarily in a personal way, not necessarily in a relationship-oriented way, but taking and filing information like a Rolodex, but some of it's used for fun and some of it's used for practical purposes, like we'll see in the summer with Virgo. But yeah, Gemini is one of those signs. And this is a time of year where we're almost in summer. This is a time to lighten up. You know, it's the end of the school year for the kids. So kids are getting restless now and they're anticipating the fun of the summer. And hopefully people that work all year are anticipating having, you know, a weekend vacation or a week vacation to just have fun and not do anything. So for all that Gemini restlessness, you can tune into that in your chart. And this is definitely a time to honor the versatility are probably the most versatile sign of the zodiac, which is Gemini, especially the true early Gemini people born this week. So I think that's where we'll end it. We went over the cosmic weather. I was going to talk about Stevie Nicks' chart a little more. Maybe I'll do a quick video on her because I haven't done a video this week, but maybe I'll get a quick one out there to talk about that. But one of these live streams, I'd like to get someone's chart, maybe from the audience. Someone, if they want to do it ahead of time or something with me, that would be kind of cool. And then we could maybe talk about someone's chart. Of course, we could do it anonymously. I wouldn't mention the person's name or anything identifiable, but we could do that. But thank you so much for another AstroScoop live stream. Getting tired. Happy summer, almost. Happy spring. And then next week we'll be talking further about Gemini. We'll be in the Gemini 2 period, and we'll talk a little more about these transits, including all this Gemini energy. But it is good. Gemini is good because Gemini gets us unstuck a little bit when we can get stuck in Taurus. And that can always be a good thing, even if we're not respecting rules, right? We have to stir things up a little bit, or at least Gemini does. So thank you so much for viewing. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And will see all of you guys and gals next week. Have a great week.